Would you be interested in working with me on that?
I would.
Okay.
I have a background in website design,
Oh,
marketing, all of that
Say
stuff.
no.
Oh,
That's why I sent
wonderful.
that email suggesting that you take pictures, because pictures speak,
Yeah,
volume.
okay.
So,
We can certainly take pictures on properties that the board's already approved grants for. That would be the ideal place to go, I think.
Okay.
So why don't you and I we'll set a
Okay.
date to do that, to
Okay.
start working that up.
Okay.
That's good to me.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Wonderful.
Well, I
What an
thought you were gonna
asset.
volunteer yourself. I thought, I wanna be involved.
No.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll do that.
Okay.
Laura and I'll commit to bring back something tangible at the next meeting. Okay?
Yeah, I think one of the things that would help us is to pinpoint how we think we'd use it. Now, you've talked about, approaching people who are new to the community. Would it be during a sales process, a presentation?
No. No, I mean, it would be point to point, just using some sources I have sort of in some of those communities up there. And then just reach out to them and say, hey, I got your name from this person, I'm local, this is what I'm involved in. Just kind of explain it and say, if you have a few minutes at some point, this is not any kind of sales thing. This is, would you have an interest in maybe trying to get involved in helping us have funding or, because this is how we do it and this is kind of how much we use per year. And generally, I mean, from what I've found, I mean, even in like church activities, people really just do want to get plugged in when they move to an area. They don't want to just like sit at home and look at the TV. I mean,
Yeah, one of my thoughts is the Newcomers Club of the
Yeah.
Foothills.
That's a good
When we first moved here and we used to attend those meetings regularly, and they always had a presentation by some organization locally, and some of them were
That would be a good idea.
excellent in educating all the new people, and people would then get involved or attend, so there's different places. Okay.
Yes, so we got the product we want to kind of create, the presentation, and then another component is a list of who to do. I mean, why
Yeah.
don't you give us, bring back your thought, give us a bona fide list. And, maybe y'all can put y'all's heads together on that.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
That'll work?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. Okay, so we are now on application review schedule timeline. Just a little background, the ordinance has a schedule. This board in the past created a new schedule by policy, which was basically accept applications January 1st to June 30th, and then make decisions on applications July 1st to December 31st.
And I would like to make a motion for discussion. I would like to move that we vacate the current policy of accepting applications during the first 6 months of each year and awarding grants during the last 6 months of the year so that we can comply with the ordinance which establishes the deadlines for grant applications as April 1, August 1, and November 1 of each year.
I second that motion. So now we're open for discussion on this.
So why did they set the schedule?
I think that they did it, I asked Shay about that because Shay was on the board then, and I believe that they felt like if they had that kind of schedule on July 1st, after that deadline for applications ended, then they would have everything together and they could look at it all at once. They could compare all the properties that they would be deciding on in that year. And there's logic to that. I think that's
There is, but
a
it's very restrictive, I think.
And what do you mean by restrictive?
Restrictive in that if somebody comes along in the second half of a year that needs the funding, they've got to wait, at least 6-9 months before they can even apply and have a decision. I just think it's too restrictive. So I agree with the motion, so.
Other thoughts? Frank, you were here probably when that was
Well,
made.
I came in right after they imposed that, but it made sense because And the applications haven't come in like we had thought. You know, if it was coming in 4 or 5 or 6 a month, you're gonna have to restrict your awards. You can't just hand everybody one. And what I think Shay was looking at is, we get everything in front of us, and then we can make a decision on, we rate each property or whatever as to the importance of their needs. And that's what I remember trying to do, we never got that many applications in, so we hadn't had that problem yet. I think they was just looking out to the future, hopeful that there'd be a whole lot more applications than there have been. And it may be one day, where you have that many.
And if I don't have any problems with the current policy, I just feel that if we are going to do that, we have to ask the county to change the ordinance, because it is my belief that we cannot have a policy that does not comply with the ordinance.
That's
right. And so.
So, and what specifically is the ordinance? What does it state?
It says that the board shall accept grant applications on April 1, August 1, and November 1 of each year. Andy's got the language, he'll read it.
So have you got a copy of the ordinance? You probably have it in your
It probably
original
got it in my
backup
original
material.
packet, yeah.
So in section 2-404, section B, application review, the board shall accept 3 rounds of applications per calendar year in accordance with the following deadlines: April 1st, August 1st, and November 1st. And then that's B1. B3 is the board shall evaluate each application and submit recommendations to county council within 60 days of each application deadline referred to in the prior section. And I asked the county attorney about that, David. Here's the situation, and he said, yep, you're right. The board can't have a policy that supersedes the
Right.
ordinance. The ordinance has precedence.
Right.
That's where the power is.
Yeah.
And there's not been any issues with that. It's just not proper procedure.
Right.
And, approving the ordinance, amending the ordinance, that's an involved process. I don't think we want to do that unless we find out in our experience that this just doesn't work. We got to do something different. So that's the basis, really, of the motion.
So really, if we go along with the county ordinance, we can then accept them every 4 months and approve them within 60 days. So 3 times a year, and so if we get too many that it becomes a problem, then we could revisit it. But I think that would be much more flexible to coincide with the county ordinance.
And for me, it ties in a little bit, I've got the idea that I've been hitting on of that we should budget ourselves. And, my draft for that policy is, we set an annual budget and then we maybe set a grant budget. And, it could be that only a certain number of grants per application cycle or something. I don't know. It's hard to say, really. We have now received 2 grants that are much higher grant proposals, much higher requests than we've gotten in the past. So we see and know that we could spend all our money in 1 week if we wanted to,
Right.
or a lot of it. But anyhow, any more discussion on that motion?
I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea, yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed.
As a follow-up, and I'm sure this won't be a surprise to anyone, because Andy just read the second part of the ordinance that said we have 60 days to do it. I'd like to make a second motion, which is that I move that we schedule 2 meetings within 60 days of each grant application deadline in order to comply with the ordinance requirement to send grant recommendations to the county council within 60 days of the deadlines.
And I'll second that, just to get us discussing. So the next grant deadline, we're back in April 1st, August 1st, November 1st. The next grant deadline, application deadline is August 1st. And so my thinking is that, shortly after the deadline, we need to have a meeting so we can group together and say, okay, here are the 2, 3, whatever applications we got. And then we need a meeting within that 60 days from the application deadline to make our decision. And our decision may be to table or whatever. But the basic decisions are approve outright, approve with modifications, or disapprove. That's what the ordinance says. So our next meeting is August 13th, so that works fine to do our initial review. Okay, we may have grant applications come in between now and August 1st. We've got 2 applications on the table now, and those are the ones that are referenced in the agenda. So we would need one within 60 days, and looking at the calendar, those potentials are, the latest one would be a September 24th meeting, 17th, or 10th. There's 3 meetings that would fit that criteria of within 60 days. And so I would just, there's a start, there's 3 potential dates for that second meeting for the August application cycle.
Does it have to be 60 days?
No, it could be,
It could be any time, but it's
yeah,
just, you're just
within
saying
60
within the
days.
60 days.
And that's
Okay.
purely up to us. We won't be getting any other applications in during that cycle. Once we've got them in hand on August 1st, all our job is to
Just
review
to
those.
review those.
Right.
So it's a shorter meeting, it's not the full agenda, it's just a review?
No, we can do anything at that meeting,
Oh, okay.
yeah. But that will be the primary focus of it, and time taking.
Okay.
In that same vein, Katie has given us copies of the criteria that we use for scoring, and this complies with the ordinance. That's how we would be reviewing everything. And so we would come back to that second meeting with these documents kind of filled out, our criteria done, and then we would kind of pool our thoughts on that and see, well, it ranked really high in Laura's reckoning, low in Andy's, or whatever, and work from there. So,
I think we have, it seems to me, we kind of have to vote on the motion before we look at changing or adding or whatever we're going to do, new dates. Because right now, the dates we've got on the currently scheduled for the remainder of this year,
August 13th, October 8th, December 10th.
right. So, so I think we need to vote, that's just my opinion, is we need to vote on the motion.
Read the motion again, would you?
Okay, the motion is that we schedule 2 meetings within 60 days of each grant application deadline in order to comply with the ordinance requirement to send grant recommendations to the county council within 60 days of the deadlines.
So you're saying vote on that and then have another
Yes.
motion on what those dates will be?
Because arguably, we only have to have 1 meeting. I'm just suggesting 2 meetings because I think, and this is my approach as both a grant applicant in the past and a grantor in the past, is that 1 meeting for something as complicated as this, 1 meeting for us to receive all of the applications, to decide who's going to do the visit and the site visit, and have looked at the applications, and be able to tell the applicants if we see that there's something missing or whatever, and then tell them they have to get that information to us by whatever date. So then we have a second meeting when we've all evaluated, we've got everything. Because I wouldn't want someone to be disqualified just because they checked a wrong box or they forgot to attach something that would be easy to correct. And if we only had 1 meeting, then I think we kind of get into that during that 60-day period. And I think we have to comply with this ordinance 60-day. So that's my reasoning for the 2 meetings, but we don't have to have 2 meetings. We could have 1 or
It just gives us the
5.
flexibility, is
Yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Or 5, but I don't think Katie wants 5. She probably doesn't want 2.
Whatever y'all want.
Well,
But
let's talk about the process. So we get, let's say the April deadline's gone by and we've done whatever. So now we're heading towards August. And we get an application in July 15th. Will you send us that application then? Or should we say, we don't see anything until August 2nd or August 1st? You see what I mean? I mean, somebody
Yeah.
could get us a grant application that we're looked at for 2 months before we get the others.
Which is what's going to happen now, because the 2 grant
That's right.
applications we've got were received after our April 1, so they are in the August 1 cycle,
That's correct.
because they didn't meet the April 1 deadline. They barely missed it, but they missed it. And so if we're so we've got 2 applications that I think we've probably all looked at. I know we've all spoken to the applicants, so at least for this coming up August cycle, we know we're kind of in that situation where some applicants have already talked to us, we've already had site visits,
What are we gonna do when we don't have any applications?
then that money.
You guys act like we have this wave of stuff coming, and I'm sitting here
There will be very
thinking, we
few
have
sometimes.
two, but it doesn't, I'm just kinda curious where all these other ones would come from.
Yeah.
And when, if we don't, then we don't meet? Are our meetings dictated on?
No, if we've got other business, then we would still meet,
Okay.
but if we don't have grant applications and the only
just don't.
thing on the agenda was to consider grant applications, I personally don't see why we would have to come sit down here
Well,
to say
what
we don't have any.
What we've done in the past, because we still have to do your treasurer's report and everything.
Yeah.
Would come in, 15 minutes would be out the door. I
Oh,
mean, it's
okay,
just-
there you are. Mhm.
It's just very short,
Yeah.
and you get very few people, just enough to,
I mean, I'm just, the reality sort of in my mind, I'm like,
Sure.
we might not have that many.
Right.
At certain times, we might, I never.
Yeah.
And I think we need a process though, and whatever
Right.
becomes of that reality, as long as we have a process, everybody's got certainty, the grant applicants and us about that. And so if we did that 2 meetings per cycle, I mean, right now, we do 7 meetings a year. So 6 of those meetings would be based on the grant cycles, and then 1 meeting would be whenever. Now,
And one of the things I think we'll find is that the grant applicants will start choosing when they submit based on what other funding they're looking at and what those deadlines are. For example, if they're looking for money from the State Conservation Board, then they might want to know our decision in time to be able to tell the State Conservation Board. Or if they're looking for money from another source, which there are other sources that they can use our money as match, then, so they might say, well, for this property, we really need it to be considered in April because our deadline for this other grant application is July 1, and we'll know whether or not we can use this as match. And the next one will say, well, so I don't know if it will space them out more, or if it will chunk them all into one cycle. We won't know until we do it. To kind of answer your question some more.
If I was an applicant and I was submitting on the August 1st deadline, I would think, well, I'm gonna be at the August 13th meeting, and I'm gonna give a presentation, and then I'll probably be at the September meeting to give a final presentation or something like that. But, I mean, any more discussion on her motion? And so you just want to move on that concept,
I want to move
not
on the
on the actual
concept
days.
of two
2 meetings
meetings.
per cycle.
Because, as I said, I don't think, that's not the only way we can approach it. That was just my thought. So,
Mr. Reality Check, do you have another idea?
No,
You think
I
it's good?
don't. I don't.
Okay, yep. So,
because you're probably right.
no, I mean,
yeah.
Because we've got 2 right now, I think we're off.
it's kind of like in real estate, some years I can be really busy, some months, and I'm like, God, and then all of a sudden, 4 months later, I'm like, whoa, where'd everybody go?
Well, all you got to do is look at the accomplishments that on the handout, how many grants we've given out, and I've been on the board a little over 3 years, so, I mean, you didn't have some very slack time.
yeah, I was definitely doing they're coming through the door. I know they are. And they're all lined up outside.
And I think, at least I'm influenced by the fact that at my very first meeting, there were 2 new applications.
Well, it's because we got money, they know we have the money.
Right.
I mean, that's what it's dictated by.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Sorry, I can't see.
It's okay. So, well, we don't have to move on changing dates right now because we've got an August 13th date that will work on that schedule. But we can decide if we wanted to.
My sense, because Katie's the one who has the most burden, I think, with our, and those of you who work, with your calendar and getting dates on it. And so I would think, and tell me if I'm wrong, that Katie would want certainty as to what meetings we're having the rest of this year.
I would, just because I want to go ahead and advertise, because I do have to advertise for the meetings.
Yes.
And I would just like to do it in one time. And if we need to, if we're not gonna have the meeting, I can cancel it, that's fine, but I would just prefer to, on one time, just all the meetings for the year.
I understand. And we're just trying to finish the year out on this, and then we do another, we do a
Yes,
motion for
so-
every year, right? I mean, a notice for every year, correct?
Yeah, in December, don't we usually look at the next year's, all of the dates for the next year in December?
I already have one, when I do the initial dates, because the first meeting of the year is just like election of officers, and so we don't really do any business on that date. But I go ahead and advertise for that first meeting of the next year. So it's usually in February,
That's
is
right.
that first meeting. So that one's actually already scheduled.
Okay.
So I usually just make the meeting dates, I think it's the second Tuesday of every other month is actually how I determine when the meeting's gonna
Yeah.
be.
So that February meeting right now is scheduled for the 11th, okay, of 2020. Okay.
And that would still work.
Sure it would.
For that.
Yep.
Because, okay.
Well, in this general discussion, I mean, if we wanted to change the schedule to fit this motion we just made, we would kill the October 8th meeting. We'd leave the August 13th. We would need a meeting no later than September 24th. We would need a November meeting after that November 1st deadline. We'd keep the December 10th meeting. We'd keep the February 11th meeting. So,
You would need to make a motion to, like, whatever dates you want to cancel, we would need that motion, and we would need a motion for whatever the new dates are, because that's
Okay.
how it's normally.
two motions.
You can probably put it all in one, it's
Okay.
probably a long motion, so we might wanna do it separately, because it
Okay.
might be too long, but yeah, I would need to have a motion in order to do that, because it was on motion before.
So my
Yes.
only question would be, do we want to go ahead and schedule dates? And if we do, we can,
If you-
we'll,
I
we'll-
would say yes. We need to notice them.
I mean, and I'm just doing this as putting it on the table. If we are, then I'll make a motion for
Do
it.
you wanna do that, or do you wanna sit down and look at the dates? Would that be easier? Cause I mean, doing it right now is, it's,
Okay. Well,
however y'all wanna do it, I'm good with it. I'm good with whatever you guys wanna do.
that's just my question. Do we want to do it now or do
If
you want
y'all
to do it
just
August
If y'all wanna give
13th?
me the dates, I'll write them down, that's perfectly fine. I just didn't know if we wanted to kinda sit down and look at the dates and see.
I'm not gonna be here the August 13th week.
I will not be either.
And I probably won't be either.
I don't know how much you'll miss us, but we won't. I don't know what we're doing to begin with, but we won't be here.
But as far as I'm concerned, I may be gone the entire month of August. So I will probably try to look at that meeting on the web,
Okay, so.
because I should be back for the September meeting so that I know what's going on. But anyway,
I think we should schedule the September meeting then, because we've set ourselves up to have a 60-day review starting August 1st.
yeah.
So I think we need that. I mean, I think we could potentially schedule all the meetings right now. I mean, I got my calendar, but if nothing else, we should do that September one, I would think.
Are y'all available other days in August? From a quorum standpoint, should we move that? I won't be here for any August dates, but I'm worried that if on the 13th, we know 3 of us are meeting, it really only takes one other person, are not going to be here. It only takes one other person to be sick, and you've lost your quorum, right?
I will tell you, I've got a conference, my annual conference, the first week in August, so I will not be here.
Okay.
So I know
So
that would be out.
how about August 20th?
I've got meetings on the 19th and 20th elsewhere.
I'm available in August, so that's not an issue with me. September's my issue.
27th then. How about the 27th?
27th, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I think I'm gonna be good.
Okay, so I'm going to write this down for you, Andy, so you can make your motion. So it's cancel August 13, schedule August 27. I'm just writing this down for
I
you
understand.
when you get ready for your motion.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and make my motion. We'll see if I get a second. So I move that we, and I'm gonna put it all together, Katie.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
I move that we cancel the August 13th meeting and the October 8th meeting. And that we schedule a meeting for August 27th. And we schedule a meeting for September 17th. And we schedule a meeting for November 5th. End of the motion.
Hey.
Hmm?
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
November 5th, I believe, is gonna be out.
Okay, November 19th then.
Because 5th, I'm gonna be out of town.
Yeah.
How about November 19th? So I move to kill the August 13th, the October 8th, and to schedule a meeting for September 17th and November 19th.
And
And what?
August,
27th.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Sound good?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll be here November 5th, but that's.
Did you get that, Katie?
Yes, sir. Sorry about the November 5th. I think we,
No, that's fine. It's getting near elections or
we
whatever.
don't have council that night.
That would've killed this
for the
meeting.
election.
That's right.
Okay. All right, very good.
That's an important.
Okay, so back to the agenda. So we are not going to discuss the Moore property or the Lyles property.
Let me just make a comment on the,
Yes, sir.
looking through the more property data that we received. There's some very personal information on some of those documents that need to be redacted before it's sent to us. We don't need to see social security numbers.
Okay.
That keeps us out of a liability standpoint somewhere.
Yes.
Can you make a motion in that regard?
I will, that,
All
And make it
applications.
general, make it for everything.
okay, that we don't need to see any personal information that might be considered libelous, whatever,
Invasion of privacy.
invasion of privacy, on the documents that we receive as a board. Is that enough?
That all applications redact any private information
Okay,
that's not necessary for the,
Well, I think you need to be more, in any private
Okay.
information, it's all
Yeah.
private in a sense.
That's
But
right.
no driver's license, no social
No
security numbers.
exactly.
Birth dates, yeah, any of that private information, yeah.
That just caught me by surprise when I saw that. I was-
so are you thinking, Andy, that the motion needs to specific and list what needs to be redacted?
Why don't we say such as?
Okay,
Okay, you got all that in my motion?
no,
No, I'll.
Remake your motion.
yeah.
Okay.
My motion into that motion.
Yeah, I make a motion that we redact personal information such as driver's license numbers, social security numbers on the applications that we receive as a board. Is that close enough?
I second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Very good. That's a great idea. All right, thank you. Discussion regarding presentations for 2019. Anybody have any thoughts about that? And I think the idea there is if you got an idea for somebody to give us a presentation, just bring it to the table and we'll say, sounds great, and then we'll get them on the schedule.
Okay.
Discussion regarding Coney County Treasurer's Office to manage funds through the state pool. Okay, so I'm going to give you, yes,
Did you skip the proposed budget?
did I?
Yes.
Oh, I did.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. I'm sitting back down. So, proposed budget. I'd kind of challenged us to come up with a budget. I don't think we're required to do it. But anyhow, I'll make a motion and we'll just see where it goes. So I move that we establish an annual budget of $100,000 and a maximum grant budget of $25,000 within each annual cycle.
I'll second that for
Okay, any
discussion
discussion?
purposes.
I have a question for you. Does that mean that we could spend the whole $100,000 in a single cycle? Should we decide that there were four, assuming we had four applications, that were worthy of $25,000 each?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And discussion on it is that, I mean, we might want to amend it or whatever to say, to give ourselves the latitude, if we find if some property comes to us that's like worthy of more, we could exceed the per grant cap.
Well, the one thing that bothers me about that, and I know we aren't flooded with applications, but from a conceptual standpoint, at a minimum, I don't want us to spend all of the money in one grant cycle. For example, if it was April 1. Now, it wouldn't bother me if it was the November grant cycle, but if it was the April 1st one. So I don't know but we can't control the timing of the applications. We don't get that much. So I don't know if we should be able to amend I guess we could, if we spend it all, then revise our budget for that year.
I wonder if we're trying to address a problem that doesn't exist yet.
Well,
We really need to say that we're going to restrict how much we'll spend overall, or restrict
I don't think it's as much, in my opinion, as trying to establish a restriction as to establish clear communication to the Upstate Forever people and to the soil conservation, where they kind of know. Because right now, if you remember what Chris said, there's sort of an unknown quality to what we've got because we haven't really let them know what we'll do. They're kind of testing us.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So maybe not an overall budget, but a maximum grant. Would that help address?
That, I think, would help, just my opinion, I think that would help address the trying to be clear with, we've already cleared up when we're going to meet and when we're going to accept applications. And then if we allow people to know this is as much as you can ask from us.
There are a lot of other agencies that will tell you that in a year's time, they've got X amount of dollars total, and you can apply for it. I don't know if they restrict the amount they can apply, but the total is always there.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm playing devil's
I
advocate.
was just going to add that when I came on this board and Shay was here, I thought our mission was to help the landowner with some of their cost, not provide anything for the land itself, but for some attorney's fees or surveying fees, things like that, not pay, $25,000 or $30,000 to me is more than this board needs to be approving. Andy and I discussed budget, and my budget proposal was $75,000 with a max of $7,500 per, because that's, you're not covering all their costs, but you're helping them on 2 or 3 different little items. And until we get a funding mechanism in place that's going to continue this, our budgets, we've got to be pretty cautious of how we use. We've got to get the money in the community so they'll understand that we're here to help them, and there'll be more people coming. But we do have a limited budget right now.
Just go into our ordinance, section 2-405, use of funds. OCCB funds shall be used only by eligible OCCB recipients for the acquisition of interest in land, including closing cost. So we have the authority to give grants for the acquisition of the interest in land, and not just. We still get to decide how we're gonna use it,
I think,
but we have the authority to do it.
but going back to the Moore property, that's what that is for, is land acquisition,
That is correct. In the Lyles estate.
And the Lyles estate, exactly.
Yep. I have to say that I think 25,000 is a good number versus going as low as 7,500, because in larger tracts of land, you can exceed 7,500 just trying to get a survey done.
Oh,
And-
it is.
And so, I think we'll be kind of probably hitting our heads against the wall if we keep it on the lower side. Ultimately, we vote and decide on each case by case anyway,
Yeah.
So if we do put a budget into place and somebody needs or wants or asks for more, and we look at it and go, oh my God, this is awesome, we ought to be doing it, can we change it? Can we easily change that?
It would be by a decision. Everything
By a
we're doing in this
decision.
regard is by our decision,
Okay.
so we can change it by decision. And maybe addressing Emily's concern, maybe we could say, just back to my motion, that concept, maybe you could say, okay, 100,000 per year, 25 per grant, and no more than 2 grants. Wait,
I
You
don't
could
want to
do-
do that.
Why don't you just have a $100,000 budget, and then we'll assess each project on its own merits?
Okay.
And if it's.
And that
way you're not
that would be
limited.
another way. And we may, I'll tell you, I'm not real comfortable with the 7,500 or even limiting it to the all of the closing
Right, right.
costs.
I understand.
But that is something we all need to be exploring and thinking about, particularly between now and August 1, because that is, how is this board going to function? Are we going to be just the final funding for, or do we want to also assist them in being slightly more, we're not going to do total funding, I don't think, but doing additional funding so that they can use us as matching for grants. They can use it even if all we're funding is the closing costs, but that's a philosophical decision that we probably all need to be thinking about, because it makes a difference in how we look at each application. Do we see ourselves as being the final? Okay, we'll give you the closing costs so that you can actually close once you get all the rest of your money? Or do we want to be the one that says, okay, we'll give you 20,000 so you can go out and start getting matching grants? And
And
that's.
why can't we do both? On a
We could.
case-by-case
Yeah.
basis?
But I think it's a we certainly can under the ordinance. It's a philosophical issue that, because that's what I'm hearing you say, is you've always considered the board to kind of be that last piece.
See, I was sitting on the board when we had 0 funds. No, I say 0, we had $300 or $400 because we'd go out and try to beg people to
Yeah.
give us some money. And we was just always very conservative up here, I mean, because we didn't have anything to work with. And I appreciate y'all's opinions, because we
Y'all
do
were
have
poor,
some.
but you were happy.
Oh. There's a lot of people out there that wasn't happy, but, you know, I'm probably the most conservative up here because I saw that. And
Right.
I saw when you put that money in here, and we really had to take care of it because we have no other funding sources at this time to supplement that.
I think it's also important to note, that's why it's really important for us to rely on these scoring sheets and not as much of rhetoric as like, let's really lean on the score, because that's gonna help us determine what's worth more to our conservation bank.
Yeah. To our bank and how we
Because obviously,
prioritize.
every property is gonna be different, and certain ones are gonna be worth more than others, and, you know, and when we're throwing numbers, I mean, I think this is really, the criteria worksheet's what is gonna help us decide going, you know.
That's correct, but it's still, you know, the ask is I mean, if you got 5 applications, they all make 100 on the criteria sheet, you know, and the ask may be from 5,000 to 50. You know, you still have
That's
to
what
make,
I'm
you still have to make a
my theory is
decision.
that they shouldn't all score 100.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that,
It
but
should be
I'm,
rare to get a 100.
Yeah.
no, my point is that I'm just saying that you've got good applicants. And the range and the need and the ask is gonna vary. It's gonna vary, you know, from low to high. We've still gotta make that decision of, you know, they scored an 8 on it and they asked for $7,500. They scored an 8 on it and they asked for $50,000. You still gotta make a decision on spending a lot or a little. And do we
Or
want help on making that decision? And that's what a cap would give you, is help on making
And
that
did we
decision.
turn down any? Did we refuse to fund some of them?
Right,
Because they're so low on the,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
there's some small properties
No,
out
yeah,
there.
exactly.
I mean,
right.
Yeah. And the first one we turn down is gonna be hard on all of us. It is. I think.
Well, that's, we did got a motion and a second on the floor, so we could have the discussion. Any more discussion about those motions? Doesn't matter to me how we vote on that, so.
I don't mind the 100,000, but limiting, you know, I just like to be based on each individual application, the merits of it, instead of saying a max of 25.
Well, does anybody have any ideas that we can replace or amend my motion for that seem to work better?
And see, well, this is interesting, because I hear you saying amend it to not put the cap, and I'm going, well, maybe we should do the 25, so that we basically say to them, don't come to us asking for more than
More than.
25. But not put the annual cap, because we may only get 2 applications, or, you know, we may get 7 that are excellent. But we just don't know.
I see your point too.
But if we do it that way, then if we have something that's really, really good, that's the best we've seen in 2-3 years, then, you know, they've only asked for 25. If we tell them, don't ask for more than 25, then, I don't know.
I mean, we could always set a budget for this year and see what happens, and I would assume that every year we review and come up with a budget.
Well, that's true.
And we can review it next year and decide, if the 25, 100 max is.
You know, we've got 2
Like-
cycles this year.
I just feel, you know, that 25,000, every applicant that comes before us is gonna have, they're gonna ask for 25,000. There's no doubt.
But that doesn't mean we have to
That's
award it.
exactly,
That's right.
I mean, we can decide anywhere from the 25 down to whatever.
What are we
believe.
waiting on as far as in regards to awarding money? The Lyle's property and the Moore property, are we waiting on paperwork to have a final vote, or?
No, well, if we're complying with the ordinance, they did not submit those before April 1.
Okay.
So they're actually considered August 1 applications.
Okay.
So we will consider them and discuss them during that 60-day window after at the August and September meetings.
Okay,
Those will be the first, and any others that might come in before August 1.
okay.
But probably those are going to be the two that
Yeah.
basically we're going to hold them till August 1.
Okay.
And
And I
it's because
think
of the
that's-
ordinance that we have to
Yeah,
hold. it.
because of the ordinance. Those were the
county
deadlines
ordinance.
submitted in the established in the ordinance.
And I think those applications are complete, as far as I know.
Well, we'll have to look at them more closely. I noticed that, I think the Moore application had corrected some of the questions I had. But I'll look at it,
I think it
and,
had to do with like a mortgage.
yeah, I had 3 or 4 little questions, and it looked to me like they had all been answered, but before the August meeting, when they'll be here again, I will certainly look to make sure my questions are answered. And at that point, then, the site visits can be discussed also. I mean, that's my perspective of what we voted on, is
Okay.
that we're going to have a more uniform approach.
Well, let's just call a vote and see if it passes. All in favor? I'll go aye, because I made the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
I'll go ahead and say aye.
I'll just dissent for the fun of it.
I'm surprised. So we've just adopted a budget, $100,000
With the 25.
budget with 25 cap? To get us to the end of the year, essentially.
Yes, just,
I think that Laura's suggestion that we just adopt something and see how it works out is what persuaded
we can
me.
change it if we need to.
There's
Yeah.
nothing, it's
Okay.
not in stone.
No, we're kind of having to learn as we go.
Okay, motion passed. You can wake up.
Eddie, wake up.
There has been so many motions during this meeting.
Yes.
That's a good thing, though.
We've been saving it up.
We're emotional.
You're-
We are
No,
emoting.
it's a good thing, it's a good thing.
So, what I just wanted to give you, I met with, the treasurer, Greg Noel, and Deputy Treasurer Connie Below on, May 21st as a result of our May 7th meeting, and we had to check off a box there, which was we had to authorize the treasurer's office to, sign on our behalf. They are managing our funds in the state pool. And what I want to give you is, this is the sheet from Community First, just telling you exactly how much. It's that figure right there, 589,168. It's a little hard to figure out where the number is, but it's right above that first empty box. So that's just information I'm giving you, that that's how much we put in the state pool on, May 22nd.
We making money.
Yeah,
Where
we're
is
making,
this number at?
it's right up here.
Oh, got it, okay. Okay, and we have this $20 service charge.
Debited 589,188. There was a $20 service charge to move it. And so what we moved was 589,168.13. And so I move that we approve the county treasurer being able to sign on our behalf or on our account with the state pool.
So moved.
Okay. And that's the county treasurer department, whether it's him or the deputy or whoever.
Yeah.
So was Andy the motion and you were the second? So we've got a second. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the general, I mean, that's just kind of like, we could have been signatories, but we didn't want to do that. They didn't want us to do that. Keep us out of that loop.
That's right.
And just the process that they explained to us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, my understanding. So let's say we approve a grant application. That approval is relayed to the county council. I assume at their next meeting, they're going to approve or deny our recommendation. Let's say they approve it for the amount that we said, that information is relayed to the county, to you, and then to the county treasurer's office, and then they make a pull of those funds from the state pool.
Send an email and then call.
Okay, send an email and call
That's
to,
what they
to
do.
approve the pull of that. And my question next is, where do those funds go? Because the closing may not happen for a year after it's been approved.
Until I get the easement documents or whatever the final paperwork is, I will not, I wouldn't put it on the agenda for council until that information is done. Once it goes to council and if they approve it, then I will send an email to Connie and Mr. Nowell, let them know, and then I'll also call Connie. That was one of the things that we had said that we wanted to do, just so we have two different methods. basically.
Right. But my point is that after let's say the council says, great, we like it, we approve it, then the applicant has 3 months to do an appraisal. And if the appraisal comes in above,
No, all that's done before it goes to council.
that's not what the ordinance says.
Well, that's what I was looking at, and it says that we have to forward it to county council within 60 days, and it says what county council has to do, but it does not actually say county council has to consider it at the next meeting, I don't think. Oh, no, the county council has to take action on the board's recommendation within 30 days of the board's submission. So the council has to vote, even though the check may not be issued until you get all the paperwork. They have to vote within 30 days of our sending the recommendation to them under the ordinance.
I definitely
It's up
think
here,
funds should
under
not be
five.
moving until everything, it's like a closing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
What it is.
that's the point, as far as the 12.5 for the other one, that's why I haven't wrote that check yet.
Right, which is,
Because
but
of that reason.
as long as council votes, then, but you still wouldn't send it to the treasurer saying, we need the money until you got all the documents.
Correct.
Okay.
But listen to this sentence. The board may only authorize grants to purchase interest in land at or below fair market value pursuant to a current within 3 months of grant approval by county council. Independent certified appraisal. So the county makes its decision, that's county council approval. And then you've got an appraisal within 3 months of that decision. And we can only authorize grant funds to purchase interests in land at or below fair market value pursuant to that. So what I'm saying is that there's still a 3-month period at least for that appraisal to come in. And if it comes in above market value,
The
Well-
Moore property's already got an appraisal attached.
But they're gonna have to have a new one that's done within 3 months
He
of
can
the
ju-
grant of
All
approval.
he's gotta do is update if the comps are within
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
That's not
So
hard.
I think one of the things we're gonna have to tell applicants, because if they get us an approval, there's a 90-day window between the application deadline and the county council vote. And we're gonna have to have an appraisal that's dated during that 30 days. I mean, that 90 days, right? Is that what it says? No. It has to be within 3 months of the county council, one way or the other.
okay, and the next section says that the board shall disperse our funds, and the closing shall occur after all the applicable requirements have been met. And my only question is, where's that money after the county council has told you to tell the treasurer to send it? So they made their decision 30 days after we made ours, and then you tell the treasurer pulls the money, where's it go? That's my
Shouldn't it
question.
go to community first?
Okay,
So I can
that's
write
all I
the
wanted to know. Yeah, okay. It's just gonna sit in
That's
committee
still
first.
the way y'all are wanting to do it, to write the check.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
So you write the check, and who's going to sign it then? That was the discussion.
Emily and I are the signatories
Oh,
on
okay.
the community
On the
first.
community.
That was one
first.
of the one thing was, were they just going to, when we were talking to Mr. Nowell the other day, is that something that when they pull it from the state pool, it does go to community first? I'm now kind of second guessing that.
Scary.
Yeah, that's my question.
Are they going, I can't,
We can direct that.
How you wanna do it?
I mean, can't we tell the treasurer, put it in community first?
I mean, I think I would rather do it that way because I always do like a certified mail so that I know that they have to sign
Okay.
for the check.
Okay.
I would prefer to continue doing it that way, just so that I know, because I'm a paper person. I want to know that they got it. I want to be able to see that, and they have to sign for it and everything. because I actually.
So you're
had that
talking
come
about
up.
a paper check versus a wire.
It'll be a wire too.
It'd be a wire.
It'll be a wire to Community First, but a paper
Back
check to
to
the
account.
grantee.
That's the reason why we didn't close the account, because I have to write checks for that.
Okay.
And so that was the reason why we
Right.
left 25, or it's going to less $20 down, so like $2,300 is what we left in there.
Okay. So should I would think maybe I want to withdraw my motion and do another one, which is that we, well,
You want the treasurer to sign on our.
well, I want to append to it then, which is, and direct the treasurer to send those funds to the Community First
Okay.
account.
All right, so we're amending the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, you want the first part of the motion to approve the county treasurer to sign on.
Withdrawals from the
OCCD
state pool.
behalf. Okay, and then.
And you
And
say,
to
Motion
deliver-
again, I'm sorry, amended motion.
And then to deliver those funds to the OCCB Community First account.
Perfect.
does,
Do I need to, I don't need to amend my second, but
If you'll just, somebody will just second that.
I'll second that again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nope, that's good. Thank you for the clarification.
yeah,
Mid-year report to
we
administration.
need to
Oh, we
vote.
didn't vote. I'll let you go by.
Okay, we got a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Mid-year report to administration. So that's, Katie gave us a handout. She's already started this report. And I think what's left is future expectations and goals, and then needs. Everybody see that report?
Is it this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I actually sent it to everyone, so y'all can be thinking about it, working on it.
And so let me just ask you, on the accomplishments, the first bullet there, my question is, what's the date of that $7,500? Was that this year or in the past?
It was in the past, I think it might have been.
It was last year, I believe.
2018?
2018.
Jerry Powell was.
Okay.
Is there any way to put dates on these?
Yeah, I can go back. This was the report from, Duke Power, and I took it
I
from
got
that,
you.
and so we didn't have dates on that, so.
Okay.
But I can go back and do that, I don't mind at all.
Okay. All right, but I mean, it's a mid-year report for this year. I mean, that's something that happened last year. We don't necessarily have to report on that. Is that correct?
We don't have to, but I think it's a good accomplishment that we did do that.
Well, let's do-
Regardless of whether it was this year, you know what I mean?
So this is a cumulative, not just a half a year. This is a cumulative of everything we've done since our inception?
I wouldn't say everything, but the accomplishments that we've done in
Monetarily,
the
yeah.
past. I mean, because we haven't had a grant, we haven't submitted anything other than the $9,500 was the only one that we've done this year. So I think it's good for them to see that we've done those two, even though it was
Okay.
last year.
Let's just date them. Okay, each one. And so,
So, and can we change the heading of accomplishments so it's not, so it's
This actually
understood?
came from the administrator's office.
Oh,
the
okay,
reason why
that's
it's
the way
like
they
that.
want it?
Yeah, this is very informal. That was one of the
Okay.
things that they said, it was very, very informal. So they just kind of want to know what we're doing, where we're going.
Okay, that's fine.
And if, what they can
Okay.
do to help us.
I think dates will clarify that,
Yeah.
what we're talking
I'll
about.
be glad to put that on there.
Okay, so that's for all those first $3 amounts, and then the OCB has reviewed the other 3 applications. That's all in the past as well, correct? That's not this year, because we hadn't reviewed any this year,
Right.
okay?
Do you want me to take that out?
No, that's fine, I mean, but just,
And, well, I updated it with the ones that we had, the other ones, the Moore and the Wiles, because I don't think it wasn't on there. So I've actually updated it with them. I
So,
went back and looked at my statement of interest packets, and we have had 7 since.
inception.
okay. And this kind of makes me, and I noted this when I was, anyway, I think not for today, because we've got a lot on our plate today, but we're going to have to look at how we funnel the current process of having a statement of interest that we kind of give a preliminary nod to. I think there are 2 steps where we say, okay, this is still looking good, you probably want to go to the next one. We may need to set some deadlines in, because I understand the reason for doing that is we don't want someone to go to the cost of doing a complete application if we can superficially tell them, this just isn't going to meet our requirements. It's a developed piece of land. You don't understand what we're about. But I don't want to discuss it now, but I think that's something that we're going to need to maybe look at tweaking the process. Or maybe we're not. Maybe we're going to say, you can submit a statement of interest anytime, and we'll consider it. But
Is there
we
a
just need
process
to.
now for when we get statements of interest, or is it just any time?
Yeah,
No, it's just anytime. If it's a new, on the agenda, I'll put it under new business.
Okay.
And then so anytime. That's
What?
usually the way
I don't
do
think
it.
we're gonna get that many.
okay.
I said, I don't exactly think we're gonna get that. Once again, the volume might not be enough to really I mean, and I also don't think we can actually restrict people from trying.
To submitting
You know, I mean, even if we wanna save them time, maybe.
Oh, no, we can't. They can, if they want to come in, the first time we see them is with a full-born application. I think that under the ordinance, we have to, and it's filed, we look at it the next cycle. But that makes sense. We'll just continue with the way we're
Yeah.
doing it,
I
and,
guess I don't see a problem with it. Because we
Okay.
can get them anytime. Nothing happens really until they submit an application.
okay, that works for me.
That's just giving them the go-ahead to go ahead and do it. Even if it falls within the time frame.
Yeah.
So if they do it like in May, for instance, we give that statement of interest and we have a meeting and you guys say, yeah, go ahead, let's go ahead and have them submit a form. Because that's typically what happens is once you do that, then they can submit that for the August term and then that'll give them enough time
Yeah.
to do that. So typically they'll fill out the application and then they usually put like a map or something behind it so you can kind of, so you don't have everything, but you have like, okay, this is what we're talking about. So that usually kind of helps and you go from there. So and that's how we've done it historically in the past, so.
Okay, well, that works for me, unless it becomes a problem, which we're not gonna have that many applications.
So I would say, I would add in here, for this year, to date, this year, in 2019, we received 2 applications that will be reviewed in the August 1st application cycle. And maybe something like, we can get more.
So
Just-
will you take out the review the 3 applications and all, do you just take that sentence out and then just replace it with this one, the receive the 2 applications and be reviewed during the August?
You could make those 2 separate statements.
Yeah, I would either-
Because statements of interest are totally different than
Yeah, I mean, you could
receiving the
say, in
application.
your first sentence, you could say, prior to 2019, we reviewed a total of 1 application. I guess that's true.
And then list what application
And
it
then,
was.
and 5 statements of interest. In 2019, we reviewed 2 statements of interest and 2 applications. But it seems like you would have reviewed 3 applications because you gave them 3 grants.
Yeah, they have.
Some of them, didn't go through, some of them, like they would do, they.
But I mean, the 7,500, the 1,250, the 95, that's 3, that's,
Right.
so you did review before 2019 3 applications, and that's what those grants are for.
Yes,
Okay,
but
I
we
got
did
you.
have statement of
I got
interest
you.
that came in that they reviewed, and then they asked for an application, and one, we just never did receive an application,
I got you.
period.
Okay.
Like a full application, we never received it.
So in your sentence, the total of 3 applications, that's prior to 2019, and the 7 statements of interest, are those prior to 2019?
I'd have to go back and look, I wanna say it was, I think I added 1 on there for the 7, so I think it might have been 6.
Okay.
Prior to 2019, but again, I'll go back and look and just.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify for
Yeah, no
them
problem.
what we've reviewed this
Right.
year.
This year,
And I
yeah.
think it's 2 statements of interest and,
Okay.
and we'll review 2 applications.
Okay.
In the August 1st cycle.
Yeah.
Do we need to give them a dollar figure on the funds that we transferred to the state pool? That'd be better? Okay, all right.
So I'll have to fix these dates here. So I'll fix these to match the new ones,
Okay.
that we just, approved today.
The
So I'll
dates?
fix those, yeah.
Okay.
So up to, so then I'll actually move June 11th up to the first one.
Yep.
So I'll move that.
Yep.
And then I will fix these and, so we are not having one in December, period?
No, we're leaving that one on.
Where's,
Gotcha. You're right, you're right.
So that second line will be August 27th, September 17th,
so we got.
November 19th, and December 10th.
Okay.
Let me kill my calendar so I won't show up on October 8th
And
or August 13th.
I was going to add, under accomplishments, I would add that for the remainder of this year, we established a budget, a total of $100,000, maximum of $25,000 per grant for the remainder of the 2019 calendar year, under
Now,
accomplishments.
is it gonna be for the remainder of the year or for the remainder of the fiscal year? Because the fiscal year ends June 30th.
Oh, because we're on a July 1 fiscal year. Well, the fiscal year, yeah, we
How
did not
y'all want to do
address when we voted whether that was for the
think about it.
fiscal year or whether we meant the calendar year.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking calendar year, but I can certainly revisit that.
I was thinking calendar year too.
What's two?
Well, I wasn't even thinking about it until you were just talking about it. That was my bad too.
Okay,
Let's just, well, do we need a motion to clarify that?
You would need a motion to amend your previous motion.
And what was the motion then? What was the motion we need to amend?
I'm not wondering-
The $100,000 per year, $25,000 per grant for
no, that-
calendar year.
It is
2019.
per calendar year or fiscal year?
Yeah.
So
was
what we need to
intended-
do is put that in.
One or the other. It was intended to be calendar year, but I didn't say that.
So you do want calendar year, you don't want fiscal? Because that's the house, that's how. the-
Doesn't matter to me.
Probably,
Um,
if everything we
Our
do
next
is
meeting's
based
gonna
on the
be
county and it's a
fiscal
fiscal year, we ought to do it on a fiscal year, right?
I mean, that's how the county does it. And it's probably how state pool does it and.
Well, next meeting's new fiscal year anyway, so.
I move that we establish that budget to correspond.
Amend your motion.
I want to amend my earlier motion on our budget to clarify that it applies to the fiscal year, which starts July 1st.
second.
So it's not going to start until July 1. This budget will not start until July 1.
That's correct.
Perfect.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Yeah, so we'll put that in the accomplishments. We established a budget. Future expectations.
Well, one is that the board is going to start making presentations for additional fundraising. We'll come up with a plan and implement it. Maybe it should be worded that way, that the board will finalize a plan and implement, will finalize a fundraising plan and begin its implementation, or something like that. I don't know if that's an expectation or a goal.
What's the fundraising for?
Oh, fundraising for the grant, the corpus of the grants, I mean, for the board. How do we say that? To raise additional funds for the grant.
For the OCCB.
Yeah, for the OCCB, okay, yeah. That's the only thing we can raise funds for.
Future expectations, can we say that we anticipate we'll make grants in 2019?
I would think that would be a good expectation.
Yeah.
We have two in front of us.
And are we also going to consider, well, I guess that would really be, this relates back to the fundraising, but somehow put in that our goal is to come up with an endowment. How do we need to word that?
That would need to go under goals, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our goal of the fundraising would be to raise enough money to have an endowment to permanently fund the board. Isn't that the goal?
Yes.
Mhm.
Do we want to set a specific goal? Like we'll get a donation this year?
No.
Let's not go that far.
Right.
Too much pressure.
Some of us work better with pressure.
I understand.
Some of us, that's the only way we do work.
Do we want to have a goal of educating the community?
I think that's
Our-
achievable, or it's something we need to,
Like educating what the community on the purpose, function of the OCCB?
Sounds good.
Michael or Vicky Shirley.
I think, one group we need to try to get with is folks on Kiwi.
Sorry about that. Okay, anything else for future expectations or goals? Needs, how can administration help OCCB reach its goals?
Make sure Katie stays
Give
right
us
there and
money.
helps
That's
us.
right, make sure Katie
Keep Katie
stays
employed.
right where she is.
Give Katie a raise. In excess of 3%.
Anything on that? I think we're
think
very
that when they
happy
can-
with the support we get.
Yes.
Well, I think, how can administration, well, it'd be administration, which is Katie. Okay,
Oh, yes, it didn't, you're right, it doesn't say county council.
it's not the county council.
No, it's the administrator. And
Okay.
If, like, anything that she could do, that's kind of like what they were asking for, is what is something that their office could do for us to help us, is it, whatever it could be, if it's okay.
And that's probably where you would have a better idea than we are, because we just look to you and go,
Yeah.
help.
I mean, Ms. Brock is very knowledgeable in this, and so if I ever have a question, naturally I'll go to her, and she helps me, so.
Okay.
So really just any questions that I have, or, whatever, that's usually what I do.
So should we just continue to support the board secretary? Or do we even have to put anything there?
I would say staff liaison, 'cause that's
Okay.
what I am, you're the secretary.
Continue to support staff liaison. Yeah, that's right, because I guess technically,
You're the clerk to council.
yeah.
I am the clerk of council, but I'm also the staff liaison for this board.
And probably other boards, right?
Yes. Not commissions and boards, but like committees for
Okay.
council.
Anything else on the report? Okay, and
I do have one question. Is this been new because of the new administrator? Or is this something that's always been done?
No, this is the first time I've seen this.
Okay.
okay.
Just never-
So what I'll do is I will fill in all this, and then, I believe it's due July, I think it's July 15th or something like that. So that's the reason why I wanted to kind of get it on here, kind of get everybody's input in it. So I will, fix this, and then I will send it to everyone, and then once I get the okay, and I'll send it to everyone, but Mr. Smith, if you don't mind, just text, not everybody, because the we can't have everybody replying to an email, just FYI. Because that would constitute a quorum. So Mr. Smith, if you could just let me know when you're good with it, if you've talked to everyone, or if you're
Okay.
solely, because you're the chairman, if you'll just let me know, yeah, it's good to go, and I will forward it on to Ms. Brock
Okay.
at that point.
All right.
So if we see an addition or change, we should respond to him, not you.
You can respond to me, but just don't reply all, because I will send it to everybody, because once you hit reply all, it constitutes a
The
quorum.
meeting. Yeah.
Uh-oh, I did that.
Okay, don't do it again.
I'm sorry. No, I just said I will be
It's
there.
okay, it's okay, don't worry about it.
So when we all respond to, when you want to know who's
Just
attending.
Just reply to you.
Just reply to me, yeah.
Okay,
Well, I
gotcha.
think all of us replied all, didn't we?
I know.
Probably so. I just was letting everybody know.
And I really wasn't paying attention, so.
So guys, we're all fired. We're off the board.
Straight to go.
Some more free time.
If because I do send out all the documents as far as.
Somebody
agendas
got it too.
and backup. I do send it out as a whole, because I mean, that's the way I've always done it.
Yep.
So if you need to reply to me, don't reply all.
Okay.
Just to me, and especially if, I also like to know when y'all are coming and attending, and I meant to send an email yesterday. I think I sent one last week to remind, I did send one yesterday. I did send one yesterday.
Yeah, you did.
Yay, okay,
That's
good.
where we replied all, yeah.
Usually I will send like the day before, I like to send an email, so when you get that, I always like just to know when you guys are if you guys are gonna make it, just so that we know, just so that I know that we're gonna have quorum and all that stuff.
Okay. Any new business? Any old business? I've got one piece, and that's, this report that Fran sent. Do we need to give that to you now, or is it okay that she sent it to you?
I have a copy, I gave a copy to all you guys, that was for the Moore property?
Moore.
Okay, yeah, so it's actually in backup, so I put it in backup whenever I received it, so, but I just wanted everyone to have a copy
Okay.
of it, so put it with your stuff,
Okay, all right.
and, yeah,
We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Boy, that was quick.
It's always easy.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.